here we are again. Another week, another dollar. Marty, what have you got lined up for us this week then?
Well, we did water, fire, and earth. So this is the last of the elements. So this is air. All around us.
Air.
Air.
But how does air affect whiskey? It couldn't possibly do anything to whiskey whatsoever.
Justin, it's an intrinsic part of the whole thing. Now, when I talk about air, there's a fair bit of this talks about oxygen. So it's a little bit of air, if you know what I mean. You follow it up. You're a smart man, Justin. You're a smart man. But I'll just say, Justin was the highest man in Northern Ireland at one point this week. He was honoured with a skip on his tail.
I can barely walk, Marty. It was tough. Sleeve Donard, if you don't know, is just it's the Queen of the Mourns. It's the highest point in Northern Ireland, and it is pretty darn hard slog to the top of it. I can tell you that much.
Well, so a number of years ago, me and three other guys started out. One guy, he hurt his knee, so he couldn't finish. We did the Mourne Wall, which was 27 miles, if memory serves, over 15 mountains. Justin, I'm not joking. I'd rather be horsewhipped than do it.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. I mean, we didn't even have any whiskey with us to help us celebrate when we got to the top. If you were to drink a whiskey when you celebrated at the top, if we dumped the champagne, what would we drink at the top of Sleeve Donard?
Well, you'd want something warming but invigorating. You'd want something. You don't want something too light, so you'd really go for a sort of a good double distilled, probably a Scotch, quite a heavy bodied. Maybe something like an Ardbeg, or if you like peated, and if you don't like peated, you would want maybe Macallan. Macallan would be a good one.
Why would you pick one of them then as a celebratory drink? Because it sort of warms you up. It's going to give you the fire in your belly to get down again without the fire getting to your legs.
A good robust, heavy body. It's got a nice body to it. Okay. That's what I would recommend. So go prepared the next time. Take whiskey. This is for you.
Next time I'm going to go with a helicopter. That's what I'm going to go with the next time. That's what I'm going to go prepared with the next time. So welcome along if you've joined us tonight. Remember to comment, like, and share. And we really want people to look on Facebook, don't we? But we want them to also subscribe and YouTube as well, because we're not too far away from the big numbers, Marty.
No, we won't. See, the thing is, if you don't have 100 people, it's really hard for people to find you. If you don't have that contingent signed up to subscribe, you can't name the channel, and it's really hard for people. I know people on here who probably, I don't know, maybe have looked for it and can't really see it. It's because you don't have enough to start with. And as soon as we get the sort of green, the seed planted, we're flying. We don't want. You can go and buy these. You can pay people in China to sign up for it. But what's the point? There's no point in doing that. We want to do it real. We don't want to be paying people that don't actually care. We want people to care,
And subscribing, of course, is free. It doesn't cost anything on YouTube. All you're doing is signing in. There's ads, but sure, there's ads everywhere. Now, you pay your car tax and there's loads of ads beside the road. How does that work? But here we go. Tell us more about elements. Where are we heading first?
Now, we'll talk about air. And I want to talk. Air, as we all know, is all around us. Now, I'm going to talk basically the way through the whole distillation process a bit, and where air plays its part in this. And probably one of the surprising bits is on grain delivery. When you're talking about tons of grain being delivered to a distillery, you get lots of dust coming off the grain when they pour it into the silos and stuff. And if you're taking tons of this, one of the big problems that you can have is dust explosions. dust comes off the grain. So lots of distilleries actually need air extraction to take away the dust. So the dust gets in the air. Also, well, for health reasons, you might have to wear a mask. Now, this currently seems to be a major issue for people. Who knew there were so many people had terrible aversion to wearing a mask for about 10 minutes while you go to the shop. But anyway, so in distilleries, you need to have take a real care, because dust explosions, when you have extremely flammable liquid beside you, this is something that has to be taken into account.
I've got a picture of somebody that didn't wear a mask. There you go. There they are. There, hanging over their gravestone.
that graphic was for a bit later on.
I know. I couldn't resist that when you said that. I couldn't resist it.
So that's probably something that most people wouldn't think of. If you take it, if you want to make 10,000 litres of wort. Now, wort is the sugary liquid before it becomes beer. It's what gets fermented. If you want to make 10,000 litres of that, which is a huge amount, but it's a large distillery, you need about 2,000 kilos, 2 tons of grain to make that. And when you're doing that, that creates a lot of dust. So if that sparks, suddenly it goes up, and you can cause real problems with this, So that's one element of air. Now, once you make that sugary wort, you take your malt and you mix it up with water, and you turn it into your grist. You mill it down, mix it with water, and you get this sugary substance. Then you put in your yeast. Okay. Now, yeast need a number of things. They need energy. And they need oxygen during their growth phase. Now, mainly when you're certainly when you're making whiskey, it's talking about glucose. So you take the glucose sugar to turn into your alcohol. Now, luckily, as a handy demonstration and a wee product placement, now we have not been sponsored by this thing, but this is glucose. I'm going to be like a yeast cell.
So, I mean, if Daley Thompson had been there on the Antrim Coast today, he would have been sponsored by Lucas Aid. But of course, we had Sir Mo Farah here today.
Mo Farah. Up round, not too far away. I was going to go and watch him, Justin, but I couldn't really be bothered, if I'm totally honest.
Because it was very early in the morning, I know that, yeah.
Very early in the morning, and it was threatening to rain. So I decided Mo would have went by me, and then I'd have been left looking at lots of very badly out of breath farmers coming behind him.
All right.
So,
what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for fermentation to arrive? Gosh, that Lucas Aid looks good. It's full fat Lucas Aid. I only drink Lucas Aid Zero now, you see.
See, then you've been no used to. You couldn't ferment anything then, Justin, because you wouldn't be any good as a yeast cell.
Okay.
No. Now, the graphic you've put up there, the blue line is the oxygen in the wort. Now, you can see where all the different phases are in this. Now, yeast's a very, very, it's kind of amazing. It needs oxygen to grow, but it's not actually for respiration. It needs it actually for biosynthesis to make, I can nearly say that, to make the cell walls. So you see there where it's suddenly the exponential phase there, where it drops down really, really quickly. That's because the yeast starts multiplying and it sucks the oxygen out of the wort. Now, the oxygen sits in the liquid, dissolved. Now, people get slightly confused sometimes what that actually means. When I open this tin of Lucas Aid, you see that the carbon dioxide in this starts to bubble. The carbon dioxide is actually still in gas form inside the liquid. We just need a little anchor to all come together to bubble out. And it's the same with the oxygen. when the oxygen is being used up in the wort, it's used to build cell walls. The yeast doesn't actually breathe it in and out the way we sort of conceptualize it. So when the yeast is eating the glucose, it makes a number of different things. It makes alcohol. For every glucose molecule, it makes 2 molecules of alcohol or ethanol. It makes carbon dioxide. It heats and it creates biomass as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So it has these properties. Basically, it eats sugar, pees out alcohol, and farts out carbon dioxide. That's about as good as I can sort of make it for you, buddy. You know.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I've got to run through some of these comments because they're coming in thick and fast tonight. We're 10 minutes in already. We're talking about elements. It's our final in our elements series. We're talking about air and its role in whiskey production. Now, who's been in touch tonight already? Michael Matthews is saying, are we going to be talking about hot air?
There's always lots of hot air talk in this show, I can assure you.
We're getting the big wahoo rather than the yahoo from Mark Kerr. Patrick Mulkey's saying hello. Good evening to you. And remember, if you have any intelligence questions, it doesn't matter whether they're intelligent or not, ask away. We like them. Earl Price is telling us he's having a wee Irish peated single malt. Bottoms up to you too. And Mark Kerr saying, well, John Justin nearly killed me. Did I nearly kill you? Oh, no. Sleeve Donard nearly killed you. You look fitter than me, Mark. And then there's a recommendation for the Mourns. You've recommended this one before. Yeah.
Cool. Kalila's great stuff too. I'm a great fan of Kalila. It's lovely.
All right. Julie Mason's saying hello as well. She's saying even to you, Julie, as well. Have you ever managed to get up the Mourns, Julie? Marty enjoys the Mourns very much. Let me see. Andrew McAllister had a very nice tasting at Glengoyne Distillery on Thursday.
It's nice to get out and about, you know. These places are opening up, and good. I hope there's so many places. I mean, me and you both know the tourism industry is basically kaput this year. So people need to go go be a local tourist, you know.
They do. There's a new one at the Shed. Let me see. We'll get through these because we're nearly a quarter of the way in. Have to say on the summit, I shared a bottle of porter aged in Dunville Cass. Okay, there you go. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Earl Price is saying hello to Mervyn. These people mustn't have WhatsApp. Earl Price is saying hello to Sarah Connolly. No, always comment, like, and share. Tag the people properly, and that way they know to watch the show. Mark Kerr was laughing at her crying angel, but we'll go into angels later on because the angels always get to drink some of the whiskey. And Marty, how are you looking so young? It's the alcohol consumption. There we go. Sarah Connolly saying hello to Earl Price. Mark Kerr is saying, is look as he had not an oxymoron? Look as he had zero. Yes, it is. A glass of bubbly then. I should have brought a glass of bubbly. Sherman, I should have.
Just for you, and Sherman was one of the guys that did the Mourne Wall with me. And at the end of it, he was so happy and elated to be finished. I thought he was going to die a few times. Another guy that was with us, he almost did die, at which point Sherman says, if you fall down once more, we're abandoning you. That was it. Yes.
That's terrible. J. Pro Rodden is saying, evening, lads. Is excess CO2 an issue with fermenters as in health and safety?
It most certainly is, yes. CO2, as you know, is heavier than air. So if you're in a large distillery that's not ventilated, what can happen is the CO2 can come out. It's odorless and colourless, obviously. So if it builds up too high, it's heavier than air. So it comes down and builds up. And you do have to take care, because it will make people go unconscious. And if they go unconscious, all you have to do really, quick, if you do it quick enough, is get them to somewhere that's ventilated, and they'll be fine. But it is when people are designing distilleries, they have to take all of this kind of thing into consideration. Because if you had a confined space with with your fermentation tank sitting there, and this comes out, suddenly the guy goes unconscious. He can't get himself out, so someone else has to. So all of this stuff has to be taken into consideration. Yeah, so it can be a problem, absolutely.
Well, it certainly is. That's a very good question. We do like questions. Remember, if you tap them in, we can bring them on screen. And Marty, you really want people to go and look at YouTube, because we're still trying to make this 100, and the promise is still on for a very special gift, isn't it?
Oh yes, yes. You get to spend a night with Justin.
in the mornings, in the sleeve honored hotel, in the bridal suite. There you go. No, you don't. You're going to win a miniature. A miniature is what you're going to win.
I'm going to just say, there's lots and lots of different types of yeast. Okay. The one that most distilleries use, there's a few different yeasts that can be used, is brewer's yeast, which is kind of a specific one. Now, the reason they use it, well, one of the reasons they use it is it's very stable and so on and so forth. It's a very sort of predictable outcome for what you're going to get in many ways. But the breed of yeast that they use, it actually enables this thing called the Crabtree effect, which is a very weird thing where they don't actually need oxygen to do stuff, to do what they do, if there's a high enough glucose, sugar-rich environment. So once they use up the oxygen, they can not breathe. They don't breathe it anyway, but not use it. It's a very weird evolutionary quirk. It's named after a man called Herbert Crabtree, which he observed that this process was happening in cancer tumors. But this is what happens. That's why when the oxygen depletes, fermentation really goes through the roof, because there's loads of yeast has bred from the sugar with the oxygen, and then they just munch through the sugar. So when you seen that chart earlier on, you see the oxygen going down, and then as it goes down, fermentation flies up and stays there, and then as the yeast runs out of food, it all starts to die off, and the fermentation ends. So it's a very predictable pattern, but it's extremely complex. Yeast is an amazing thing. It's absolutely incredible what it's capable of doing. I mean, anything that can turn sugar into alcohol, yeah, that's a good thing.
It's pretty impressive stuff. So that's the fermentation process. So the air leaves it then. The air is gone from it then.
The oxygen is out of the wort, okay? But it's now been converted into a beer. That's essentially what they do. And some beer makers actually pump oxygen through the wort to help the yeast grow, essentially. So some of them do that, some of them don't. It all depends on what way they want to do it. Now, coming to the distilling, Grant's created at the Girvan distillery, and I think you have a photograph there of a big still. I think it's sitting outside. They come up with a process called vacuum distilling, where they remove the air from the still and do the distilling inside that. Now, there's a couple of reasons why. When you take away the pressure, the air pressure, if you like, it means you don't have to heat it as much. to get the distillation going, which saves cost. If you don't have to put as much energy in, it saves money. But more importantly for the distillery, Grant's, it doesn't create the sulfur compounds that sometimes comes along with the distilling, and they say it's got a sweeter flavour because it's not heated as much. So they actually, to sort of capitalise on that, they brought out a bottle called Oxygen, so Grant's Oxygen bottle. And this was a distillery or a airport exclusive, but they brought that out, and this is this new technique. Now these days, everybody wants to make these energy savings. I mean, it's important. Now, whenever I talked about the CO2 earlier on, everybody wants to cut down on their CO2, but in distilling, you're really not making CO2. It's actually just part of the process. It's a sort of net CO2. It's a bit like if you get a tree, it grows, etc., etc. Carbon captures. When it dies, it's not taking away anything. It's just sort of storing it for future release. So it's not seen as a net contribution. So anybody who wants to please Greta Thunberg and not drink whiskey, this is no, you're not helping the planet stop and drinking whiskey. Just so everybody knows. And I know these days this is vitally important.
So why did nobody copy Grant's and come up with their own sort of vacuum still to make oxygen bottles?
Some of them do. There are other distilleries now that have done it, but this is a fairly recent invention, if you like. Other distilleries have been doing this, but it's not really something that people appreciate, if you like. They don't necessarily need to know. So some of the grain distilleries are doing this, but it's a fairly innovative new technique, and everybody's trying to save energy, save money, etc., etc. They say that it helps the whiskey as well. So that's another point. Right. Nope. You can say something.
I thought we were going to get flamed there because somebody says we love Greta.
Oh, everybody should love Saint Greta. Don't worry. Yeah. Good on her. She's doing a great job there, trying to save the world. Good for wee Greta.
All right. You know? I'd much prefer a Tesla.
A Tesla. I know a guy who's just bought a Tesla. And he says it's the all-power drive one, not to 60 in 3 seconds.
Wow.
He's well pleased with it. So I said to him, I'll have to come down and have a wee spin on it some one of these days. So he said, no problem.
Okay, that sounds good. I feel a road trip round Scottish distilleries coming on. if we could get it logoed up the side, Alan would give us one free, but unfortunately we don't qualify.
No,
There you go. So we're talking about air tonight in our final of the Elements series. We want you to comment, like, and share, get involved. Some great questions coming in tonight, and we're going to go to one of them in about 5 minutes. But where are we going to head to now?
Now we're going to head to, after it's distilled, it goes in the cask, and this is probably the main thing that people would think about whenever they think about air and whiskey and all that kind of stuff. The angel's share. Okay. What the angel's share is the evaporation of liquid from a cask. Now, I'm saying liquid because it's an extremely complicated process. Okay. Up until, well, fairly recently, people who made whiskey didn't necessarily appreciate what was happening. And what they thought was, well, they probably had a fair idea, but what they thought was the angels are taxing whiskey, essentially. That the whiskey is coming out of the barrel. I say whiskey, it could be rum or any of these spirits. Coming out of the barrel and heading to the heavens So the angels are getting their share. From the graphic you showed earlier on of the angel over the grave, that's the angel with the hangover.
I know.
The morning after. But what happens is it's actually a really, really complicated process because it depends on a number of factors. One, the cask, what the cask's made of. I was on a tour of a distillery one time when the girl who was doing the guiding basically said it's from little holes in the barrel, the cask. Well, it's not really, because if there's a hole in the cask, the water will come out. It actually seeps through the wood and comes out of, it comes out of the cask. Now, it depends on heat and humidity, and it can range from about 1% loss per annum all the way up to, if you go to India, now you'll see here, this that you show, this is about humidities and percentage losses depending on heat and humidity. And you can see there that it can go right the way up to about 16% per annum. Now, I thought earlier on I will do a graphic representation of what that means. Okay? So, you see here, this is a full cask. So say this is 200 litres. Okay? Year one, you're going to lose, it goes down to 168 litres. Okay? This is at 16%. So you've lost 32 litres in 1 year. Year two, you're down to 141. Year three, sorry. Year four, you're down to 118 litres. And in year five, you're now down to less than 100 litres. You've halved in 5 years. So this is losing 16% per annum. So you think about that. The cost of making that stuff, and in 5 years, you've dropped down to half of what you had. Now, in Ireland, around here, you'll only be losing about 2%. I say only, but you compound that over a number of years, it soon starts to add up. But this is Amrut 10. Amrut 10 is a 10-year-old Indian whiskey. Now, people automatically think, and this is wrong, they automatically think that, oh, it's Indian whiskey, it can't be very good quality. It's actually well regarded as quite good. But 10 years old is the oldest Indian whiskey sold because the humidity sucks it out, essentially. It takes away from the cask.
Because otherwise it would lose so much.
25-year-old Indian whiskey, unless they stick it at the top of one of the Himalayas, on top of one of the mountains, and you'll not see it because the humidity is so high and heat is so hot that the angels take the shell. Now, this is called Greedy Angels. 10-year-old peated rum finished. A bottle of this, when it was first brought out, cost about £500 to £600. So you can imagine there's not an awful lot of this. Conversely, in Scotland, you go to Macallan, and Macallan were able to bring out a 72-year-old whiskey. Now, the reason being, it's bloody freezing in Scotland and the humidity's quite low because there's not much heat. Now, a bottle of that, you can only buy it at auction these days. That's going to set you back £60,000 maybe, thereabouts. Comes in a Lalique glass bottle, hand cut, etc., etc. And I think you can see that the presentation of it's quite nice. But that's the difference. That's how important the Angel's share is. Now, 2015.
So, Marty, tell us about this team from the university in Cuba that studied all of this then.
Well, what they did was they went to, they sat down, they were primarily concerned about rum, which is aged pretty much the same, but they wanted to find out what the mechanics of the whole thing was, how you lost so much, etc., etc. And they find out it's actually much more complicated than just losing alcohol. Like, now, it's been known for a long time. There's certain places that it's actually the water that goes out quicker than the alcohol. And in other places, it's the alcohol that comes out quicker than the water. It just depends on conditions. But there's also all the other flavour compounds. Some of those evaporate. So Diageo, a few years ago, in 2015, well, this is the formula that the team from Cuba came up with to give the volume loss from the angel share. This is like an angel share formula.
It's That's incredibly complicated looking.
Yeah, it's incredibly complicated. The maths behind it and the theory behind it. So, as I say, this is how complex all of this is, and this is even only an approximation because there's so many factors at work that it becomes really almost impossible to know exactly what you're going to lose. So it's only ever going to be a very, very good guesstimate, really. But Diageo in 2015 helped fund work at Napier University in Edinburgh to try and come up with a cask that didn't let out as much of the angel's share. I'm not 100% sure where they did develop one, but I don't think it's going to work.
Maybe it's a trade secret, Marty, and they don't want you to be privy to it because everybody would want this then. And
I would argue that probably lots of people won't, because the oxygen that's in the cask, it plays its part as well. It's reacting. The oxygen's a very reactive element, as most people would know. So it's playing its part with all the congeners, the different chemicals that are in there that give whiskey its flavour. And if you inhibit that, if you prevent that from doing that, well, it would be interesting to find out just what's happening. The thing is, lots of the chemicals that are in there, as I say, all the esters and aldehydes and all these different chemicals that are there, they react with oxygen to form more complex flavours. So if you inhibit that and stop that loss, then it might change the whole chemistry of the whole thing and maybe might be detrimental to the whiskey. But it would be interesting to find out.
Would it still be whiskey or would it be a different product then?
See, this is the thing. The cask has to be all wood. You can't use nails to hold it together. You can't glue it. You couldn't silicone up the wrap it in silicone. Because that wouldn't be allowed. But Diageo apparently have tried wrapping them in plastic and stuff. I don't know. I think it would mess with the very, very complex chemistry that's going on. And probably not and be detrimental to the flavour. I might be wrong, and I'm up for being proven wrong, but I think it probably would.
So we're going to give some people a mention here tonight that are tuned in. Taylor Jones, good evening to you. Nick Ryan, good evening to you. Tim Mulcair, good evening to you. Dale McDonald, good evening to you. And remember, if you come at Light and Shirt, you can get involved. Like some of these people have really great questions coming in tonight. And they're actually highly complimentary of the Indian, which you obviously...
Yeah.
You have it sitting there on the table to my right, your left, and it's good stuff. Like Frank Hearn is saying, He was in India in 2013, took a bottle of Black Bush with me. End of trip, we were drinking Amrut, rather tasty.
Yes, and it is. It seems to be, people have this idea that you can only make whiskey in Ireland, Scotland, and bourbons in America. It's just not true. There's lots and lots of really good distilleries popping up all over the world, and there's even some popping up in England which are getting great reviews, new ones.
And also, India is a big drinker of whiskey too.
India is the largest consumers of whiskey in the world by an absolute country mile. People would automatically think the biggest whiskey drinking nation would be the US. It's not anywhere close. I mean, India, you have to remember, India, basically 1 in 6 people in the world is Indian, and lots of them drink lots and lots of whiskey. Whiskey's their preferred drink. Now, to be fair, most of it's made in India for the Indian market. Lots of Indian guys couldn't afford, expensive McAllens and stuff. It's just, unfortunately, they haven't. Their economy's not at that point yet. But they make fantastic. Amrit's really good, and they make good stuff.
There's Mark Kerr saying the same thing. Love Amrit, and he's also saying that a 50-year-old barrel is nearly an empty one.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of it. If you compounding is a very hard to do in your head, but if you take it that you're losing 2% every year, boom, 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 that adds up really considerably, really quickly. And at 50 years old, once it drops below 40% alcohol, it's no longer whiskey. You can't sell it as a whiskey. So lots of these barrels have to be stored in a very special, specific area to try and minimize how much they're losing. Because if they get down to 41%, suddenly you nip out and you've lost your whiskey, and you'll have lost an absolute fortune. Picture you've just put up, that's down in the Jameson warehouses. Each of these warehouses they're divided in half for fire reasons. Obviously, if that goes in fire, it's a massive conflagration. Each of these warehouses hold 32,000 barrels, but they're split in two, so there's sort of 16,000 in each barrel. How much whiskey how many bottles a day do you think Jameson lost, Justin, in Angel's share? How many bottles a day do you think they lost?
10,000.
Nearly 40.
Wow.
40,000 bottles a day goes into the air. Now, you think that's Jameson. Think about what it's like in Scotland. They're losing hundreds of thousands of bottles every single day, just disappear into the ether. Now, a barrel of whiskey is not a cheap commodity, and thousands of them just disappear into the air. So it's an important factor. People, but people sort of say about the Angel's share, and if you go on a distillery tour, it's almost taken as a bit of a joke, something funny, but it's actually a really significant loss to a distillery in terms of volume. I did a quick look to see what the oldest whiskey I had was, and I actually found out that it's actually this 26-year-old single malt, Irish single malt. I have a few 21-year-olds, but the 26 is actually the oldest one I have.
People have been asking questions to do with duration in this, not necessarily age, but fermentation is a buzzword now. Are long fermentations better?
Not necessarily. There's long fermentation. There's lots of factors as to why it would be long fermentation. For example, you could keep the thing chilled a bit, try and inhibit the amount of yeast that grows. You don't put too much oxygen in it. If you put too much oxygen in it, the yeasts can start to turn the alcohol to vinegar and stuff. There's lots of very complicated chemistry that I don't particularly understand a huge amount about. But you are talking long fermentation. Probably, it depends what you want to do. There's lots of factors involved. Some people just want, again, it comes down, sometimes it just comes down to cost. You can have, the longer you have something sitting, the more it's going to cost you.
Yeah, certainly that would be the case. I mean, so it can sit in the fermentation and cost you, and sit in the storage warehouses and cost you.
And it all costs money. And you could have a beer in terms of, I mean, lots of fermentation, long fermentations are done now for beers, these craft beers. But when you go to buy a craft beer and you're paying £4 for a bottle of it, there's a reason you're paying £4 a bottle for it. And all of that adds into the cost of whiskies as well. It's exactly the same process, except with whiskey, you have to then barrel age it, and all of that costs. And every year it sits there, it's costing you money. So in terms of taste, it probably works well for some, probably not as well for others.
Yeah, some great questions coming in tonight. Is there a big difference with the material container vessel used in the fermentation takes place? Because you said it has to be wood, but different types of wood, different finishes, different.
No, not for fermentation. For fermentation, lots of them use stainless steel. For cask aging, for aging whiskey, it has to be, in Scotland, it has to be oak casks.
Yes.
There are a number of different theories on this. Some say you should have wooden fermentation vessels, but it's again, people have different ideas of what way to do these. So it's tricky to know just exactly what happens a lot of the time, because it's not been studied on a scientific level, and that's just the long and the short of it. You've seen how complex it was just to say to find out that the angels share.
Well, it is. I mean, the angels share. I mean, there's a full breakdown of it here. This is unbelievable.
Yeah. So this is temperatures, humidities, and losses. So I mean, this is a chart depicting what these are, and that's how complex it is. As I say, it's all of it is quite complicated,
Okay, so we've only got 15 minutes left. I believe it or not, Marty. I can't believe how fast it goes. It just seems to go quicker every week. There's a lot of questions here still to cover. We're being asked the one to do with the decanting. Is it worth allowing whiskey to decant? And you said no to this before. Don't decant it, because if it sits, it oxygenates.
Right. Oxidizing. This is a very sort of controversial topic, and I folded my arms for a reason, because it's like, I don't know what to say here. I personally, when I pour out a quality whiskey, and I'll pour out an Amrit here just to prove my point, it improves sitting in a glass for a period of time. Okay, you pour out, and if you leave it sitting, I'm sorry, but it does improve. However, there are lots and lots and lots of people, many who have studied this in great depth, who say it doesn't. Who say whiskey doesn't oxygenate. It's sat for, in this case, 26 years in a cask with oxygen. So pouring it in from a bottle into a glass for 10 minutes isn't going to make a huge difference. But it does. If you pour out a glass an hour ago and one night and do a taste comparison, there's a difference. Absolutely. If whiskey doesn't oxidize, why if I set that out there now and and leave it until tomorrow morning, then come down and try it tomorrow morning, it'll taste an awful lot worse than it does now. So it does.
There's Conor Ryan agreeing with you. He's agreeing with you. Listen, we've only got about 15 minutes left tonight. I want to run through some of these mentions again. JP O'Riordan is asking, does a bigger angel share mean faster aging in the barrel?
No, not necessarily. It depends on the cask. There's lots and lots of really complicated chemistry going on in barrel aging. It sounds a bit twee to say it's not really understood. It's still a bit sort of a mystery what exactly all's going on. Over time, there's more reactions going on. So as the liquid goes down, it depends on lots and lots of factors, and most of them are totally not understood by science or pretty much anybody else. So the answer is doesn't mean faster aging. It just means it's evaporating quicker.
We'll get another question again. The story of the Linney Aquavat barrels makes for an interesting read breathing heat and humidity. Is that?
Yeah, you see, there's lots of factors involved. As I say, if you go online, you can find that the study by the Cuban university, and they do the whole thing. There's lots and lots of factors involved with barrel aging, an angel's share, and as I say, it's a very sort of throwaway remark when you do a tour, but it's actually a really important aspect of the whole distilling and distillery process setup. So yeah, go and find out. Yeah, it's fantastic reading.
Okay, and let me see. Mark saying, I've fallen asleep after a session. The glass of whiskey sitting on the table doesn't taste nice. Mind you, my head and tongue are shot at that point. Yes, if your taste buds have gone funny, you might have COVID-19. Dial 111 and get tested.
Yeah, Bell.
Oh, we'll be cut off by the thought police for mentioning COVID-19 next. What do you say? Let me see what else this was saying. Michael Matthews is saying he's visited Tullamore, and they've just built another 5 massive warehouses that add to the 7 they already have there. Everybody's doing this, Marty, because they can't keep up with the popularity of whiskey, and it's our fault.
Don't blame me. We're creating employment here, Justin. The builders of Tullamore should be thanking us. But I'll give you an idea. If memory serves, I think Jameson have 32,000 barrels per warehouse. I think they have 25 of those on site, and at least twice that off site. That's how much whiskey they have in store. So, and they're big, but in comparison to some of the big Scottish ones, they're not that big. You know, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Right. Okay. Let me see. Your Price is agreeing with Mark. He's saying, I agree, but I'm talking about the nice crystal decanter with a stopper, like a display. Does the whiskey lose its value to speak over time if in a decanter? Of course, because you can't prove what bottle it's come from. Even I know the answer to that one. It could be brown colored water. It could be brown lemonade. You could be making a movie.
Right. But Justin, see what they do now. They just revealed there the other day, a university has discovered a way of putting a laser through a bottle of whiskey to tell you what's in it. So if you have a bottle of 72-year-old Macallan, and you have drunk the 72-year-old Macallan and filled it with, I don't know, something awful, like where's my bottle of Proper 12? Anyway, if they fill it with cheap, nasty whiskey, they can beam a laser through it and tell you that's not 72-year-old Macallan, that's detergent or Proper 12. Pretty much the same thing. So don't you be trying to be sneaky and defraud people of valuable whiskey. No, so I can't tell you what it is. I'm just smelling this amber. There's a lovely almond note off that. It's beautiful. Really, really nice. Really nice.
What's the secret to the Amrit's product then, Marty?
Just quality. Just me. It's just a quality product. It's the same as any quality product, Justin. If care and attention and a bit of craft's put into it, it's not going to be nice, you know. And it's really nice. Amrit's lovely.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. If you want to say anything to Marty or me about elements there, ask any questions, now's the time to do so, because we're on the homeward straight, so to speak, tonight. People are saying things like, what a waste with the evaporation and stuff like that there. But it's one of those things. It's the way it has to be done. Do you think that science will ever overcome that, and they'll be able to cheat the angels? Maybe not a good idea, but like maybe trying to cheat the leprechauns.
Justin, do you not think 2020 has been bad enough without Armageddon happening?
No, it hasn't got worse. Give it time. There's 3.5 months left.
I know.
With any luck, Christmas might be cancelled.
With mushroom clouds over Beirut, which is never really a good thing, let's be honest. Pandemic. I mean, the whole thing just. So hopefully the asteroid that's coming skips this. But no. If you're saying there about science overcoming the angel share, I personally think the angel share is a really vitally important part of the whole thing, because there's chemistry going on there that we don't understand. Nobody has really studied it, and it's probably quite tricky to understand. But you do know that when something has reached a certain age, that it does taste better. That doesn't count in all counts. There's plenty of good whiskies at 12 years old that the 20-year-old's not much better. It's certainly not. It's maybe slightly worse in some instances. But the chemistry of it is really important. So the barrel aging, taking away that angel share aspect of it, I would think it's a bit of a folly, to be honest. I think it's all part of the craft of it. There's a reason you do it.
We're getting really, thinking out of the box here. If you aged it in plastic barrels, it wouldn't change the product.
If you aged it in plastic barrels, you basically just end up with, you have the same thing that you've just distilled. It'll be a clear new mec spirit. It just wouldn't change. So it's not getting the leakage or the evaporation, the seepage out, and then getting to mix with the wood and pull the vanillin and stuff out of the wood and giving it that flavour. So the angel share is a vitally important part of it.
And Frank's saying at the Amrit we got in India was 35 quid, and well, he rated it. We're getting a lot of endorsements from the route. It sounds like a lot of people have tried this.
It's really, really, really good. Absolutely. I mean, this one here. This is what one is it? That's just a single malt, and it's got a lovely almond. There's a wee minty flavour to it, like a menthol thing coming off it. I mean, it's lovely. It's really, really good. Now, I want to just touch a little bit before we go on an important other part for distillery to do with oxygen this time, and it's to do with when you make whiskey, you do have byproducts and waste, and you have to get rid of these. And one of the things that they have to take into consideration is where you get rid of it. Now, one of the things that they have to comply with in terms of environmental laws is the chemical oxygen demand of the waste products. What they mean by that is the stuff that's coming out is a natural product, obviously. But if it was to enter the water stream, it needs oxygen to decay. And if it goes into the water stream, it sucks the oxygen out and kills fish. It doesn't poison fish. This is sometimes a bit of a common misconception. When you put a biological product into the water, what happens is it sucks the oxygen out and basically suffocates the fish. So what they can do sometimes is put it out in small bits where it's not going to use up all the oxygen in the rivers, etc., etc. So some of them put it out there. Big, large distilleries, that's not an option. So they have to send it away for treatment. But lots of them now have discovered that the byproducts of whiskey, they can actually put them into anaerobic digesters. So instead of putting it in where it takes the oxygen out of the water, they're actually using them in digesters to let anaerobic bacteria eat them to produce methane, essentially, and heat the distillery. See how clever people are.
Yeah, that's very environmentally friendly, especially in Scotland where it would be cold and you might need it heated. But you wouldn't need it heated in India or places like Tel Aviv. Andrew McAllister said, you spoke of whiskey from afar. I recently got a bottle from the Milk and Honey Distillery in Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv. They started making this about 2 or 3 years ago. And Milk and Honey Distillery. They actually have 3 distilleries now in Israel. And well, put it like this. Jewish people do have a tendency to do things very well. So, you think a quarter of all Nobel Prizes have been won by Jewish people. So I imagine they'll do whiskey making very well too,
Okay, yes, that's a good point. Let me see what else people are saying tonight. We've got about a couple of minutes left because we like to keep it under an hour because you can't share more than an hour on some online platforms. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel. It's 85 likes now or subscribers now. We need to get to the 100. Marty, what do you have for the 100th subscriber?
I'll have a miniature of something very special.
Is it Lucozade?
Yes.
No, it's not. It is something. It is something nice. So we're gonna give you last few of the comments tonight. Love the show, lads. I'm spreading the good word on Twitter. Thank you very much for that. Tag me if you can at Justin Macartney on Twitter. And Ushki Tours on Twitter as well for Marty. Well done, lads. Another great show. Yule Price saying hello, Alan. Love the show. If they come in a big flurry at the end, Marty, I can't keep up with them, you see, because they all go flurry.
I'm just going to say tomorrow in the Sunday Life, I review 2 stacks blended whiskey. I review it tomorrow.
Okay. Hey, it's not a miniature of Marty's infinity bottle. No, it's not. It'll be sealed. It'll be sealed. We wouldn't do that to you. Now, let me see what people are saying here tonight. Somebody was saying it would taste of Tupperware if it was plastic. Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm going to show Julie she's saying beer is the most consumed by Americans rather than whiskey, like Indians, the biggest drinker. And Julie was saying there, oh, they're coming in that fast. I can't keep up with them. YouTube is great. Patrick Mulkey is saying YouTube is great. Really enjoyed the Paddy review. Yes, you've reviews and tastings on there specifically. Conor Ryan saying great show. Jonathan McCullough saying great show as well. We've got about.
The thing I will say is when I do reviews, okay, I do reviews pretty much of whiskies that people can actually buy. I see a lot of people doing whiskey reviews and it's like 28-year-old £500 bottles that they've been gifted by such and such. If I have been gifted a bottle, if they sent me a bottle, I let people know, okay? And I say, look, this was sent as a PR thing. I'm independent. I can do what I want. But when you see people reviewing a bottle that they've been given and it's £400 or £500 a bottle and it's all been snapped up, I like to review the basic entry level stuff as well. So I do something slightly different than a lot of people.
Well, we'll leave it there. Another great week. Julie, there is the Mourns for you. And that's where I was. That's me walking down the hill there. And, you need the photographic evidence to prove it because Marty's seen the Facebook Live. So he knows I really was there. So thanks a lot for watching again this week. Do we know what we're doing next week, Marty, yet? No?
Haven't a clue, Justin. Think of something probably about Wednesday, and then I'll cobble something. I'll cobble something together by I'll get something sorted out for about Friday, and then we'll be okay.
I'll try and catch you before then. Night.